Well, I'm really excited about tonight. I'm really excited about the story that we're going to hear. Very, very interesting man. And Trav is going to be taking us through the interview tonight. So let's give him a big round of applause.
All right. It is good to be back doing story sessions. Thanks, Don. I got onto a plane a little while ago, and I was flying back from Johannesburg, and this very tall guy rolled into the plane with like a really big bag. It was one of those hard cases, and he was trying to maneuver it into the overhead cabin and whatnot. And he was sitting opposite me on the other aisle seat, and sort of struck up a conversation with him. I'm one of those annoying passengers that wants to find out, if you're a potential story session guest. And so I had a bit of a rattle, and he says, well, his name's Matthew, and he does some photography, and we talk a little bit more. And it turns out that he's actually been spending a whole lot of time doing some photography with Nelson Mandela. And as I got to speak to him a little bit more, I realized here's a guy who's actually traveled the world. He's a phenomenal photographer. He's involved in all sorts of unbelievable projects. But more than that, it wasn't just about this love for photography. He seemed to be marrying his photography with global issues, with this passion that he has for change. He's meeting unbelievably interesting people, and the flight was a quick one as we engaged together. So when I was reminded of him recently when a client of mine had him come and do a public motivational session at their company, I gave him a ring and I said, Matthew, please, won't you be our story session guest as we kick off our next season? So why don't you welcome to the stage, Matthew Woolman.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. That's for you. Okay.
Welcome, Matthew. Have a seat.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, great.
Oh.
So I thought to kick off tonight, besides me diving into your story as I do and getting to know a little bit more about how you came to be where you are today, I went to Matthew's place and he started to talk to me about his love for photography. And I realized that this guy is super passionate and needs to be let loose for like 10 minutes just to run with why he's so passionate about photography and whatnot. So I'm gonna just say, Matthew, you've got the floor for 10 minutes. Just shoot with why this thing called photography is such a passion in your life, and then we'll start talking a little bit more about where you've been and what you've been up to from there.
Fantastic. Travis, thank you so much, and for your team for putting this all together. I'm cringing because I can't see you, actually. I can see some guys in the back there. It's good. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it's always a privilege. The opportunity to come talk to people, share stories, share this journey. Most of the time, I got my head in like an ostrich under a rock or under the ground. And every now and again, I have the privilege of coming up for air and sitting in front of an audience like yourselves. I've been a photographer since 1999. I spent the first 3 years studying, started a master's at UKZN, and just gave it up. Not because I had to do it, not because I wanted to do it, it's because I ended up realizing that I'll spend my life trying to prove the story of who we are in words when I can do it through the imagery. You know what? My whole life I've been a dreamer. I've been someone who's always gone out there and I'm just at grassroots, I'm a passionate South African, maybe in some odd ways, but let me tell you some stories just to introduce myself and say, where does it all start? You know what? In 1994, South Africa went through some crazy changes. And in April, we went through our first democratically elected president, Nelson Mandela. And in November that year, Anand Singh produced one of the most beautiful films that has ever come out of Africa. And that's Cry Beloved Country. As a schoolboy, I sat and I watched James Earl Jones on the right and Richard Harris on the left tell the story of two men trying to face their demons. Without, punting Alan Paton, who is perhaps one of the greatest authors of my time and our time today that I know is coming out of Africa, he told the story on a rock in the middle of the Drakensberg. And you know what? The way he captured it visually with music and how he panned the scenes, it became my life's dream to find that damn rock. And I kept it to myself, and every time I went to the Berg, because I go 3 times a year to the Berg with friends and with family, I always try to find that rock. I asked Anand Singh, I asked Sanjeev Singh, I asked the producer who lives, an Italian producer-director who produced the film. They couldn't actually tell me. Anyway, 18 seasons, 18 and a half years later, I went walking in the mountains, and like a jewel sitting on the side of the hill that never changed, I found the rock. And ladies and gentlemen, that was only November last year. So, but the idea that people can create things that capture someone else's imagination is hugely important. You know, I came from a background where I had some hardships. You know, all of us have hardships. I lost my mother when I was 15, and my father went to work overseas and dredging diamonds for Anglo American for 6 years. I was plucked out and put into boarding school, and all my boundaries came down. You know, maybe another thing I can perhaps enlighten you on is that I come from a dancing background. For the last 18 years, or 18 years into my career, I was a professionally trained Chiketi ballet dancer. So here I was coming from this astute world of, you know, NAPAC and exams and the Royal Ballet School, and boom, here I am in an all-boys boarding school in Kloof. Fortunately, it's Thomas More. So a lot more weirder people.
Don't do too much
Yeah.
of the history stuff, eh?
Yeah,
As I
no,
said.
sure.
Yeah.
So I began as a photographer, passionate about the world around me. I began to use photography as a passport to take me where I dreamed to be. And sometimes it's not very easy to get into unique places. Runway 211, 10 past 8, had 15 seconds to take the shot flying to London. A shoot that took 15 seconds took 8 months to get and took me 2.5 days to get back home. But the idea that I use photography to tell other people's stories, stories of lives that have changed my world and has changed South Africa today. This is the Ananda heritage, which for me is greater than going to meet Madiba and is greater than going to Robben Island. The Ananda heritage is indeed the birthplace of our democracy in South Africa today. One of my greatest joys was to be able to, over a period of 4 years, document at the Royal Ballet School in London. And this is the final rehearsal session on the top 5th floor, which is the studio. Roberta Marquez, who's Brazilian, and Steve McRae, who's Australian, rehearsing the final pas de deux scene of Romeo and Juliet. These images go on in infamy because they tell the story of what it is to create. When you wait 2.5 days to take a photograph of a monk coming across the Vatican Square, is by all means luck. I'd spent all those days waiting because they have 25,000 tourists a day in the Vatican Square, in St. Peter's Square, and I think an awesome lightning thunderstorm cleared all the tourists, and a brave Franciscan monk came walking across the square. I got the shot. Other images tell the story of hardship through the dignity of individuals. I have a small foundation, MW Foundation, and part of that is about contributing to individuals' lives. I'm commissioned with 6 main aid agencies in Southern Africa, from World Vision to World Food Programme, Oxfam, UNICEF, European Commission, in going out there as a young documenter to spend time with communities, whether it's food security, water security, mother-to-child antiretroviral treatment. It's the stories of who we are. Some shots look set up. But trust me, I had a shoot with President Sarkozy of France and his lovely wife, Carla Brulli, the one morning, and I was given a beautiful flat with the Champs-Élysées, and I went walking on the Trocadero, and with my 300mm zoom lens, you're quite conspicuous by the distance you can keep from your subjects, and I was photographing poodles, and all of a sudden, this happened. As I looked down at my camera, if I'd got the shot, they had gone. And for the life of me, I don't know who they are, but it's a beautiful shot. Other photographs take a little longer to create. Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest photographers in the world are portrait photographers. Why? Because we relate to each other. We can tell each other emotionally where we're at in lives. And this is the beautiful portrait, one of my prize portraits, of the Kisamburu woman. This is up in Lake Turkana on the borders of South Sudan, West Ethiopia, and northern Kenya. And it took us 6 days to be granted permission to even take a photograph of this woman. She is an elder in the community, and they are dying out. And a large part of my work is to work in communities. I'm off to Ethiopia next month to work with the Wurwuda people up in the Afar district, up by Djibouti. But it's these experiences that the image tells a story, but the story behind the image is what is so amazing. And because I'm rushed for time, we're going to talk about an incredible man, a man who defined my life. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 13th of August 2003, I sat with a man, and I had just come off 18 months living and working on Robben Island. Yes, 2 birthdays on the rotten island. And I realized that anyone who lived there as a prisoner, it wasn't about their face that told the story. It's about the hands that had touched the iron bars, failed to touch his kids for 27 years, and hold his wife for equally so. This is the hand of Nelson Mandela, a photograph that I have not earned a cent from. But 3 years after having taken that photograph as a commissioned photographer to the Mandela Foundation, I was privileged to have this image become the official logo of Mandela's 46664 HIV and AIDS campaign. A campaign that has a brand value of over 500 million rand. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of the visual media in today's world. How we're able to go from an idea, translate it, brand it, and put it out there so the world can share not only my experience, but the experience of an incredible legacy of an incredible man who I've come to know as Mkhulu, Tata Mkhulu, Nelson Mandela. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Can I have the clicker? Thank you. That's Matthew in a nutshell.
How's
10
that?
minutes power play. I think my first question is why would you photograph poodles?
Because the women running them are sexy.
Okay. Just want to get that out of the way. So let's talk about you. And I know you were hesitant to. And I think that gives you a bit of a snapshot of what I had on the plane. Matthew enthralling me with all of these stories and the people that he mixes with and whatnot. But I think what really, really floored me was the idea that this was a Pound Town boy. I mean, what good comes out of Pound Town? And here he is. He's sitting here before us. And I just want to talk a little bit about how you even got to this point where this is now your lifestyle. You said you were born and raised in Pound Town. Is that where life started for you?
That's right. Perhaps not the most normal of upbringings. I live next door to a convent. Marion Hill has their administrative head in Bethany Convent, which is by the Catholic Church in Pound Town. And my property, or my father's property, was bordered on that. And, I love tennis. And I used to play tennis on the weekends with the nuns. And I used to go to school the next day at Sanya Primary School. I used to say, hey, beat my mates 6 lap. Little do they know that they're nuns I'm playing with. But beside the point is I've always just accepted people, and I myself as a Christian, but not Catholic. I got to experience communities that were not perhaps every day. And how did I get to photography? I began to have a need to tell my story, other people's stories, and I picked up a camera and I studied because this is what I wanted to do. But the goal was always Mandela, and I think that's where we start the whole story.
Can I just ask about that sentence? You picked up a camera, because it sounds like you literally just picked up a camera. But did you just go and take photos of?
Well, the very first
things?
time I picked up the camera, I got into trouble. I had to paint picket fences at Thomas More.
Okay.
My friends dared me to climb to the top of a Norfolk pine, and I took a photograph. No, not the first time. The first time I put my undies up there. But the second time, I said, actually, I've experienced something that no one else has experienced. And I wanted to show the school, the headmaster who punished me so severely, and that what it was like to be up on top of the school. So on top of this tree on the school. And I took a photograph. And I think for the first time in my life, I realized that an image can change people's opinion. And from being this man or this boy at the time, to always committing suicide, no, it's not about that. It's about experiencing something new and different. It wasn't a conscious decision to choose photography, but I just began to realize that it is a medium I use as someone who's involved in the creative arts. That photography, it's not about the camera. I pick up a camera, yeah, but I mean, what's happening between my mind and my camera is one, and I just go out and it's about what I'm photographing, not so much all the other labor that comes.
And was
with
that
it.
a relationship that just developed between
Yeah,
you
absolutely. I came last in third year, and I think I finished top portfolio in last in first year and first and third year. And it didn't mean anything to me because I was so competitive with myself, because I come from a hugely competitive background. So I just went out there. But yeah.
Okay, all right. So now you're this 16-year-old. You're at Thomas More High School, and there's this opening of the RCC. All right, tell us the story about what happens when you as a little teenager goes down to this opening. And I believe Thomas More were early.
Thomas More. No, Thomas More was always late. And we were the last to arrive, and there may be 3,500, 4,000 people at the opening of the RCC in Durban. And I didn't want to be there. Friday night, it's the only time we got to chill in the boarding house. And none of us had to go down and represent the school for this opening of this stupid RCC. And we were late, so we stood on between the student. No offense, anyone works there, but anyway. But it's lovely. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But I'm standing on the road between the Nedbank and those big baobab trees, and about 100 meters away from me, I'm twiddling, dawdling in my schooner form, and there walked up on a podium Nelson Mandela. For the life of me, I couldn't remember what he said, but it was almost an epiphany, like struck me. I just said, "That's the man I'm going to journey towards." I didn't know his politics, I didn't know his business, I didn't know anything, but he just exuded a personality and a sense of character that just said, I trust that. I trust that character, and I trust the eldership that Madiba represented for this little boy who was perhaps lost as can be. And there began the journey. Little did I know that it'll take 9.5 years to eventually shake that damn hand of Madiba.
So having seen him up on the podium, there's this thing going on inside of you, just this epiphany, as you say. Tell us what happened next. I mean,
Oi, 9 years happened. You know, when I
No, well,
say
in terms of there on that
oh,
actual
that
event.
thing. Yeah. Well, I think nail on the head was that I made a decision that, you know, often I say to you, I have the privilege of talking to a lot of young adults and students around South Africa and even overseas, where I just say to them, ladies and gentlemen, what is your goal? What is your dream? Because I realized that, you know, yes, I got my dream of Madiba after 9 years, and I've been with him for the last 10 years as a commissioned photographer. But I just realized that, you know, it wasn't so much the achievement of that goal. It was the idea that you had a goal that made your life worth living. You know, by having the goal of Madiba, it allowed me to go out into South Africa. And for the first time, playing, you know, when I was young, I was playing tennis with these nuns, and the Oryx helicopters would fly over in 91, 92. I didn't know they were going to the township violence that was happening in KwaMashu and Umlazi. I didn't know it was happening because I was so isolated and insulated in my little cocoon. And when my parents went off to vote, I think those who can remember, it was that, oh my word, can they come back? But this is how, you know, I didn't understand how ignorant I was. So by having that goal of Mandela, I realized I had to match up to a man like Madiba, and I had to, if I had to stand him, you know, one thing I've learned very quickly, when you go interview someone, de Klerk, the Dalai Lama, everyone who I've worked with, don't you dare go there and say, so when were you born? You know, tell stupid stories that you can go Wikipedia it. You've got to hit the road running, particularly with people like de Klerk, politicians. And that's what I did. It afforded me the opportunity over a period of 9 years to go out into South Africa and to witness, I think that's a strong word, but it is, I witnessed this change that was happening in our country and constantly changing. I'm sure we've got an image later that will signify that and symbolically put it together.
I know like you like to move off yourself, but I think the significance of that story is that that moment you got direction in your life. There was a goal that all of a sudden sank in. And I love the idea that you saw something that you wanted to work towards. It was epitomized in this man called Mandela, but there was something a lot wider than that that you were almost began to journey towards.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and the big word is development. You cannot go out into communities in Africa, and I've learned that even around the world, even Redfern in Sydney, where the Aboriginal headquarters are, or in the Gaucho Indians, they've all got issues, they've all got problems. And you know, they're not unique to their own. They jump between continents. The issue of poverty, the issue of lack of education, you know, that's what actually, that was the seed that grew in me, is this idea that here are individuals with huge potential, with huge opportunity, if given the right path. You know, I always say, lead me down the right path and bring the right people into my path, because that is what's happened in my life. And I like to use in my agencies, sometimes they get so frustrated because I, as a photographer, my number one role is just to document. I'm not a photojournalist who takes the one sensational picture. I'm a storyteller. I storyboard my images so that clients like Oxfam, UNICEF, World Vision can actually tell their story of what it means to be developing and nurturing and growing people into sustainability.
And just, I know we'll move on to Mandela now, but I love the story that you told. You arrived at this event as like this kind of just going, you know, running through the mall. And then when you saw Mandela, you ran for a podium, and
oh gosh, yeah,
because it was quite an
You
interesting
take up,
transition. You
yeah,
had this kid that just
yeah.
arrived completely nonchalant, and then as soon as you saw him,
I needed to keep something. You know, whenever I do something great, I like to keep something. So like undies up a tree. I halfway through Madiba's speech, he was talking, and he took a sip out of this glass on his podium. So he took this long sip, and I thought, that's mine. And I'm serious. I'm standing on the back where they make the yeast factory across the way from. I'm right at the back, you know. And then all the dignitaries, King Guru Zwelithini and all the famous people went into the ICC to officially cut the ribbon and everything. And I just made a beeline straight to the podium, through the guards in my red blazer or whatever they call it, color. And I went up and I grabbed the glass, and almost like an absolute idiot, I take the glass and I go like this, and I drink from it, like the chalice of life or something. And then it's my border master, Matthew.
yeah, but I just love that story. I mean,
But I kept
this,
that glass, and I kept all these years, and it now sits in my house. I'm sure it's got Madiba's DNA. You
Yeah,
know, there
it
must
does.
be something.
You haven't
Yeah.
watched it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk a bit about that journey. So you decided you're going to meet him, and what was your next step? I'm going to meet Mandela. So what is the logical next step for
I think
someone
I
like
must
you?
put in perspective. I come from a huge academic family. My sister is she's a deputy director of the NPA, National Prosecuting Authority. She represents the Vatican Church to the United Nations. Lovely apartment in Park Avenue. But the idea that my twin sister's a doctor, my brother's this high-tech computer guy, and here I was at 24 years old. I've reached my goal. I've got my dream. And now what? So I was still camping out at my dad's house, and I was almost so let down. I met him, I shook his hand, I got Long Walk to Freedom signed, and I got a photo with him. And then what? And you got your father saying, oh, Matt, got to go start living, and brothers and sisters chirping. But the blessing in that was that they phoned me, and they said to me, Mr. Willman, where do you live? And I just said, Pinetown, sir. And I'll never forget Vern Harris, who's the chief director of the Mandela Foundation. He must have muffled the phone, because I heard a muffle goes, where's that? He didn't know where it was. But he says, well, I don't know where you live, but if you had to contribute to Madiba's life, how would that be? And I said, Mr. Harris, who's become a very good friend of mine subsequently over 10 years, I said to him, you know what? I've seen a Brazilian pictures of Madiba's face. You have gone around and you don't need any more pictures of Madiba's face. But what you don't have are memory images. The idea that here is a legacy, you are a fly on the wall, and I just needed access to go and document Madiba that's not posed, that shows the legacy of a man in private. And there began the story. And he said, no, absolutely not. Put the phone down. Boom. Monday at like 10 o'clock in the morning. 5 days later, raining. I was sleeping at 8:20 in my bed next to my dad's room, and the phone rings. It's Vern. Mr. Willman, are you sitting down? I sat up, and I was high-tech corporate. And he says, Mr. Mandela has agreed to allow you to work privately with him. And you know what it's like? Those of you who've seen the Will Smith film In Pursuit of Happiness, it's the idea when he runs out that building and finally he can breathe indeed. Finally that door opens. And after 9 years, I mean, I didn't cry then. I was so ecstatic. Oh, I was going to work with them. And then they started slowly. They just needed an individual who was not owned. Reuters, Associated Press, Arnold Franchot, Gallo, Getty. I wasn't owned. And I was able to go in privately. And that's where it all began. This little oak from Pinetown who would fly up, didn't get paid, and down the next day, or the afternoon, to work with one of the greatest men of the 21st century.
So let's go backwards a little bit. So you
Sorry.
saw him on the podium, and
we're going to be out till 12, yeah.
No, but I just want to get at, you've got the goal. I just want you to talk about, well, what did you do and how determined were you to meet him? Because this is the thing, you say, I want to meet this guy.
Yeah.
You talk about 9 years, but what did you actually do in the middle of this? I know you spoke, you went to Robben Island.
Yeah, no, it's been 18 months.
Letters.
Yeah, I wrote a letter for once a month for 6 years. So they hate me.
So
when
66 letters in total were written to Mandela.
Yeah, my math's not that good. But yeah, exactly. That long.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, 11. I did, yeah, well, 66.
Oh, you did 11.
11 because Christmas I took a break. They took a break. Yeah, we had this war going on for 6 years. They would try to get everyone in the Mandela Foundation. I had enough letters of refusal to wallpaper a wall. I mean, and everyone was so sick and tired of me. They used to get the tea lady. They used to get the gardener. Just bloody PP this thing for this oak. It really. Although apart from letters out to the foundation, it was in Tekizweni, Qunu, Vezu, Corner 4th and 12th in Houghton, Palana Cemento in Maputo, Bishop's Court in Cape Town. This idea that he didn't want to see me, or maybe he did, but the people around him didn't want me to see him. I was a nobody. I was just a little oak from Pinetown who had this dream of meeting Mandela.
You camped outside of his house?
Yeah, many times, and P.W. Botha's too. Yeah, literally, I lived on pies for days on end, see, it worked, yeah. But the whole idea that, no one was going to do it for me. I sat in a toilet cubicle in Kings Park Stadium for 2.5 hours to meet David Beckham, just so that I could ask him, can I meet Madiba? You should have seen his face. He was like, I conjure his accent. Rio Ferdinand said, I'm sure you can organize. He says, nah, mate. He was just like, absolutely not. That's how committed I was. I used to pester P.W. Botha, de Klerk, Tutu, these people that I was working with. No one said anything. I didn't realize that letters weren't enough. So I started sending photographs. And I started sending a lot of photographs. And the biggest portfolio I sent was my collection on Robben Island, actually. And I don't know if you want to interject, but you know the next story.
You get in this thing. Okay.
Slow down. Yeah.
All right, so you had this whole collection on Robben Island, and this was really the turning point because the collection was somehow put in the hands of Mandela.
Those of you who keep up with what's happening with Madiba, we're no longer the Mandela Foundation. It's the Nelson Mandela Center of Memory. And in 2004, early 2004, we launched the Mandela Center of Memory with my collection, 18 of my works personally chosen by Madiba as he related to Robben Island. And therein began my journey with Madiba. But yeah.
But don't you just love that? I mean, there's a goal as a 16-year-old, and there's just 9 years of sheer determination.
Still
I mean,
living
that
in
just-
Pound Town.
Pound Town boy, he was a waiter at the Langoustines in Sarnia.
Can I interject? You can tell that story. I used to fly up, hop a 6 flight to Joburg, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2-3 times a week. I used to photograph Madiba from Hoppers 10 till 12, have lunch at the foundation, back at the airport by 4, home by 5, straight from the airport to work at the Langoustine as a waiter. You know, it's just how it was. Over
But just
years.
the commitment to that goal. And
Yeah, because it wasn't about the money. It was just about this ideal that I had.
yeah, but I just
Yeah.
think too many of us stop short, you know. You might do 1 or 2 letters, you don't get a reply, I'll give up, you know. You wrote 11 letters a year for 6 years.
Yeah.
And I think there's merit in how we need to take a little bit more, you know, time in persevering towards our goals. So that's epic. This photo here of his office.
Yeah.
So this is sort of the access that you had
Yeah.
off the back of this
Yeah.
now second phase after meeting that invited you to spend
Yeah.
time with them.
Once you get through Fort Knox, you get to heaven. This is Madiba's office in the Mandela Foundation. It's huge restricted access, bulletproof glass on the sides. But this is Madiba's private. This is where he receives all his guests, you know, I mean, like big guests, you know. And this is a particular day. I was standing in the corner, and I am the front. There's my tripod in the back. There's a door at the back, and there's my tripod. And there's Grusher and Winnie standing on the Winnie's in the black or white collar, and Grusher's in the green on the left. And then there's Zelda tinkering away at the desk and this bodyguard. And then there's Zuleka. It was Zuleka's daughter who died at the World Cup, you know, the car accident. And Zuleka's mom is Zinzi, who's busy talking to Madiba with this white cane. And this was my theater. This is where 70% of the shoots were done. And, you know, the guests would come in. I have my little chair, and which is behind me. Usually it's just by the fireplace on the right, and I'm able to document quietly Madiba talking to his guest or whatever. I sign all huge contracts, so I can't tell you when the next Third World War will be. Not that I know, but it's this idea of watching Madiba, and the scariest thing is you think he's easy to be around. Zelda will take the guest out that door. It's a long walk around those chairs to that door, and Madiba would sit, and he would stare at you. You know how uncomfortable that is. You don't even know, you know. And you ask him 1 or 2 questions, and he calls me Prince Harry, by the way. It's like, oh, how are you, Prince Harry? I'm cool. I'm very good. He says, yeah. And why are you not married? And you know, and he would talk and talk. The one day, very quick story. I'm sitting with Madiba, and 10 minutes before the guest comes in, and it could be anyone, dictators, queens, princesses, whoever, come in, and I get 5 minutes with Madiba. Hi, Mkhulu. Oh, I'm very good. Yeah, I'm very good. And I would just say, relax him. He would, and I'll go to my chair, and Zelda would pop her head through the door. Her office is behind the cabinet there, and in would come the guest. And then it's the big palaver. I'm just the fly on the wall, and I'm just documenting. But one day, I go in, and Madiba's like, yeah, come sit. So I sit down in the chair where Zinzi Mandela is sitting, and he is going. And my contract says I'm not allowed to talk to Madiba unless he speaks to me. And this chance, he was talking to me. And 20 minutes went by, and Zelda kept putting her head in and out. 15 minutes went by, 35 minutes later, Zelda storms into the office. Are you two gentlemen quite finished? Your guest has been waiting for the last 40 minutes. So Zelda looks at me and says, you knew. I said, Madiba was talking to me. So I had 40 minutes with him, and in walks the Haitian dictator, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. So I kept the oak waiting, which was good.
Oh, well done.
Madiba says to me, you're not my guest. No. Yeah. He thought I was his guest for the morning, and I was just like, yeah, whatever, yeah.
And last question before we move on. How much of just being in this man's presence, how much of his character just rubbed off on you? Because you know, if you're just looking at your story from a third-party point of view, and I keep going on about the story
Sure.
from a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
You lack direction. You're pretty lost to the world. You saw someone who had trust as part of their character. You chased after him, and the net result is you've done something significant with your life.
Don't be fooled. Ladies and gentlemen, I have gone around the world lecturing and talking about Madiba. Never once have I ever taken for granted what this experience has had. You know, I've met people who he just walks past, and it's almost like, you know, it's almost spiritual. And I'm not putting him on a pedestal. He himself says, absolutely not. But deans of colleges just fall and cry because of this experience. For one, I'm making light of very, very intimate experiences, but for the sake of the audience and for us to enjoy ourselves, I do make light of it because there are too many. The hardship to stay, 200 photographers a month were asking the foundation for my privilege It is an incredibly competitive, incredibly difficult environment to work in. And I say that with all honesty, it is. I had to fight for my place. I was sworn at, not beaten up, but beaten by camera lenses. People hated me, particularly the media, because I got this access, which they weren't allowed. And so yeah, I forgot the question.
I was just
Yeah.
saying, something of him crept into you, and
Absolutely.
this grit and resilience and determination.
Yes, what grew on me, I had learned my lessons by going out into the country, and I still learn my lessons. What Madiba did was he magnified it. He said to me,
Yeah.
I said, Mkhulu, what can I do as a young individual? Here I am now. This is my 5 minutes before we start the show. And he's saying to me, yeah, in order to remain relevant, you must serve. And that is hugely, I didn't realize at the time. And you know what? 2 years later, I founded the MW Foundation because I realized to be viable, if that's a word you can associate, but if you remain relevant and viable as an individual, you've got to keep serving. And I think that is at the very heart of my lesson from Madiba.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
To remain relevant, we need to serve. There's a bunch of photographers in here and just a bunch of people that are coming to hear your story. So I'm going to free spool some images.
Sure.
And if you guys can also start getting ready, if you've got some questions for Matthew.
Cool.
I was going to throw these images out. Just run through them. Tell us a little bit about what you use from a photographic point of view and what they're about.
This one's a short. Okay, go back to the lady. Just
Lady.
quickly. This is in Richmond, working with Oxfam, and I'm always looking for the dignity of the eldership because they are leading the communities. I have a book which is dedicated to the women and grandmothers of Africa, and it's images like that. You're trying to bring dignity to individuals who are facing life-threatening situations. Next.
Okay.
Yeah. So quick.
Sure.
Yeah. Tough one. In all my journeys out, I befriended P.W. Botha to an extent where I'd live with him for twice a year and down in Wilderness in the Western Cape. And I committed a lot of time to him. And when he died, I was invited to the funeral and I became the last person to actively engage with him. This man, I mean, I could write a book on what we talked about because I wrote it all down afterwards. But he left me his hat and his will. And I'd always asked him over the 5 years I knew him, or 6 years I knew him, I always said, Meneer Botha, please can I take you to Robben Island? No. Because remember, he was the guy who kept people like Mandela on Robben Island for all those years. Minister of Defense before he became Prime Minister, President in 1978. So here was his legacy. And Madiba, he never went to Robben Island to see Madiba. Madiba always had to go to Taine's, Genadendal, or up in Union Buildings, wherever P.W. Botha was, in order to have a meeting. Get dressed in a suit and go see him in his office up in these fancy places. 4 months or 23 years, 4 months later, P.W. Botha finally got to visit Madiba in his office on Robben Island.
And you took his hat over there.
I still haven't worn that hat ever. I will never put it on my head. I kept it I was so afraid people would try to steal it from me. I kept it in a Checkers packet underneath my kitchen sink for years. Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah. And my maid, domestic work, she'd go, oh, what's that? Nothing.
You've spoken a little bit about this.
Yeah, about this one. You know what? Dance is one of the most amazing forms of expression. The maturity needed in order to articulate dramatic scenes, particularly like Romeo and Juliet. This is what I'm trying to capture in dance: is the idea that it is soulful and it all that work. It takes 1 minute, 1 second. I believe photography and dance are married to each other, and the two are made for each other. Just ask Richard Avedon, great photographer in the States, when he photographed Rudolf Nureyev, they were made for each other for that moment to capture what in 10 years' time he wasn't able to do because he was dead.
Okay.
One of the biggest communities of, gender issues and sexual issues that we deal with is the circumcision practices in the East, particularly to the Eastern Cape. I've never worked in Limpopo, but these are the two provinces where the prevalence of death is huge. I mean, last year, 2011, when I took this photo, there were 2,500 kids have died in the Eastern Cape alone from this ancient practice, which hasn't been kept up with modern medicine. And my work was to go in there and document the lives of these young boys and bring dignity and the reason why. We don't want to change your community. That was a mistake that the UN made when they started the catchphrase sustainable development. I hate that word. Let's call it engaging community. Let's empower them so that they can sustain themselves. Don't do it for them. It's all that cap in hand stuff we're talking about. So this is now what we're doing. We engage with communities, and it's more the idea of let's not change their lifestyles, but let's better it and keep them safe and secure in their rural communities.
And I'll come back to that.
This unbelievable. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the earliest known transcript of the Freedom Charter, talk about our dream, talk about ideals, talk about goals. This was it for every native person to this country. And you know what? In 1952, Z.K. Matthews wrote a list of ideals that could hold the different political parties together under the struggle. And in 1955, at the Congress of the People outside Bloemfontein, they scripted this, and this became their ideals, which they held on to. And I was commissioned for the book Mandela, the Authorized Portrait. I've done 6 books with Madiba. And whilst working in the Palace of Justice in Pretoria, I was allowed for the first time since 1976 to go into the holding cells where the political prisoners were kept. And with my little torch, I went with my camera, and on a tripod, I was just flashing away, not flashing with the light, photographing away these what was written on the walls. And after I'd taken, I never knew what the Freedom Charter was in 2005. And then Toki Sekwale and Ahmed Kathrada, who was on Robben Island with Madiba, they were so shocked that I had this picture that together we all went with the CEO of the Mandela Foundation back to the Palace of Justice, the Pretoria High Court, to go and ascertain what this was. And it's been verified as the earliest known transcript. It was written over in 1976, but if you look carefully, the pencil is still underneath. Unfortunately, it's not going to last forever because it was written on chalk walls and very damp down there. So this is an incredible legacy that I was managed to discover for our country. Next year, we are talking with the Mandela Foundation. We want to present this to the American president. This is our Declaration of Independence. This is our struggle.
Awesome.
On whatever level you see it.
Okay, one more, then we're going to go to Q&A. I thought I'd insert a building.
Oh, New Yorkers, those of you...
Because buildings are easy to photograph, aren't they?
Oh, no. Lighting's everything. Yeah, and perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, I saw this shot from, I don't know if you know Park Avenue, but you've got to go across a hell of a long way to get to Empire State Building. There was one cloud in that sky that morning. And I thought everyone can take a photograph of a famous building just looking good with lovely dark sky and everything. I hardlooped, eh? I went across that city like a bat out of hell, and I went straight up because I was following this cloud that was quickly moving from the East River to the Hudson. And I literally got there. There's a McDonald's behind me, and I lay like on the curb, like a hobo, like this, trying to get the shot. I got it. I got the Empire State Building with the cloud behind it. So, yeah, I was very privileged. I spent a month in New York last year in May, and it was a year before. Yeah, I can't remember. But, yeah, hoping to go back next year again, but to work with dancers there.
Okay, has anybody got any questions? I'm going to ask Dre to come and help. Or is Dre alive still? The man's feeling sick. There's a microphone over there. Thanks. Anybody in the audience want to ask Matthew a question directly? We like to just create a bit of space for you guys as guests to ask questions. Any questions? There's always questions. There's a question over here. Dre, we'll throw it up. Yeah, shot. It's quite intimate. So,
I don't know if this is on.
Is that mic on?
Be nice, eh?
Yeah, I got it on. I got lights. There we go. Okay.
Okay, cool. Shoot.
It's quite a personal question, but I just wanted to find out in terms of your view and your kind of relationship you have. You've spoken about obviously the camera side, but in terms of, I think, perspective in photography seems like the most, the biggest part in terms of what makes your work. In terms of you linking to your creator, in terms of creativity, what would you say the link would be there? I mean, do you draw from that? Because obviously artists draw from different areas.
Awesome question. Just from the point of view is, I have friends who are sitting in Afghanistan. I've got friends who are sitting in Jordan. I've got friends in Syria, who are photojournalists, and they're earning $20,000 a day in ground zero, because it's measured in 5 zones and you get paid according to what zone you're in. I made a decision very early on. A lot of kaka happened in my life early on. I didn't want to carry on photographing that. I don't believe in, I made a decision to photograph what was positive. And a lot of people have frowned upon that because the more dramatic the images, the more suffering you can photograph. And I think these journalists love that. I know for a fact they do. They live on it. It's like their heroin. So to answer your first part, yes, that is my ultimate goal. I want to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. Why? Because I have a choice. I don't have to do what everyone else is doing. Fortunately, my clients, prefer me to do that. But just from a psychological point of view, no one can ever run away from problems. They will always be there. So why create that in my images? This is my palette and this is my make-believe world, if I can put it like that. But yeah, it takes a lot of time. I say to young photographers, guys, don't just at 21, 25, 30, okay, I'm 34, don't just think you're going to be a master photographer. Don McCullen, Herb Ritz, Alf Kamala, Jürgen Schadewey, these guys are 60, 70, 80 years old. Helmut Newton only photographed his first nude woman at 60 years old. Not to say be a jack of all trades, but photography is merely the the passport. It's what happens here that the images get created. And I just keep saying to people, go on this journey with it, but perfect the techniques before you go on that journey, because you'll find yourself coming short all the time. So I hope that opens your question, answers it.
There's a lesson in that, just around accentuating the positive, though.
Yeah, no,
And,
no.
that's a lesson for all of us behind the camera or not.
Yeah.
Any other questions over here on the front? Mark van Heeren.
How did the Robben Island thing work out? How did you organize that? Because that almost seems like one of the most pivotal points that actually got you to where you were, coupled with your persistence.
You've pre-asked them these questions, haven't you? No, excellent question. The
it's
first
illegal.
two, Well, the first time I went on Robben Island, I paid a ticket, and then as you get through the Ons die Metrots, when you go through the Murray's Bay Harbour, I would duck into the bushes with the penguins, and all the tour would go out into the thing, and I'd run around the island. I did that first, second, the third time I did that, I was arrested. And I've been arrested 3 times. Or the other times I ran onto the Durban International Runway. But anyway, that's another story. That was more crazy. I had to get all my lecturers in at the police station. But yeah, when I say arrested, they held me in confinement back on Mandela Gateway at Waterfront. And who the hell was I, taking these pictures and whatever. So I said, hey, look here. So I showed them the first portfolio of images. They liked it. So I said, I have a passion. And amazing when you say that and you open it, you put your heart in your sleeve and you just say, please. They're not going to shut the door all the time. They say, okay, well, let's look at it. If you keep pushing it, the door open. And that's what happened. They said to me, carry on photographing. And whenever I could afford it, I went down. But it was the big commission. When I sent to the Mandela Foundation, they actually began the archiving process. That is my role. I've been archiving and documenting Madiba's life for 10 years. Tess, a good friend of mine, we went to the Heritage Department in Pretoria and going through documents that will never be seen by the public, and the same as Robben Island. So we went there and over a period of 18 months documented. Incredible. Just a show of hands, who's been to Robben Island? I'm impressed, yeah. No, that's great. Incredible place, incredible. Try run to the bushes and not go on that
Don't
damn
follow
tour.
your passions illegally, though. Eh?
Yeah. No,
Questions at the
seriously,
back
get
there?
into
No,
trouble.
yeah. Good. Get into trouble. At the back over there, the jump shed. That's on the other side. Just shout. Go for it. Yeah.
Obviously, your career has been signified by your relationship with Madiba, like you've said. Now, we know, as you said earlier, time is running out for him, unfortunately. So, what does that mean for you in terms of your career? You've still got a very, very long long career and prosperous career ahead of you. But in your preparation for that unfortunate time, what does it mean for you?
That's, again, incredible question. Thank you for asking that. Yes, it is a personal question. I'm going to answer it in 3 ways. The first way is, if you go on my website, you'll see Madiba is exactly the same as all my other clients. I haven't punted him any bigger than anyone else. He is a part of my portfolio. I'm a documenter. I will carry on documenting. Madiba was always the privilege. So that's the first part. The second part is, my work will continue with the Mandela Foundation. I'm their commissioned photographer, and we have museums to open. We've got more archives to find. People around the world are bringing in things all the time and interviewing people, people who are quickly passing away, who had a part to play in his life. So that's already kind of signed and sealed with me and the Mandela Foundation. I signed a contract a long time ago on the eventuality of his death, speak out about these things. So yeah, I've made sure that my career has not just been about Madiba. It will be a legacy which I will carry through. I want to be the next David Rattray, and I'm not saying this because I'm like that. No, I want to be it because I want to be 60-year-olds telling your children and my children what it was like. Why Helen Suzman thought I was her physio in her house when she dropped her nightgown in front of me. I want to tell them the stories of why P.W. Botha did what he did and his 22-year plans for this country, these are human stories. And I want to tell the human story because books can't always translate that to you. And I think that's the value in each individual. I always liken it to a pianist. I met a pianist in in Melbourne, Victoria State in Australia, and a concert pianist. And she was as dirt poor, and she used to walk around with a little trolley, and she used to sit in the hotel I was staying with playing the piano for like $20 an evening. And I realized there and then that, you know what, she dies, she can't give that gift to someone else. She dies with that gift. And she had played with Maria Calais, she had done Placido Domingo, I'm trying to get clever here, but I'm not. But these are the names she told me about these great operettas and operas that she was able to play in. each of us have something that will die with us. And it's the idea of, for me, I tell stories. I think at the end of the day, I'm a storyteller. And it's taken me a long time to realize that I tell stories through my experiences and through my images to sweeten it, or to provoke. Thank you very much.
One or two more. Over here. Have you got a loud voice? Joe, do you want to run around? Very sorry, bro. Okay, go for it.
I mean, that's like huge. Like how?
Just asking this question. This is amazing.
Sorry,
Carry on.
like
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a
there it
psych
is.
background, so I'd love to know
So, what is your background?
psych
Ah,
and
okay,
politics. Psych and politics.
So through a
which
psychological
are great.
perspective.
You're welcome to do your thesis on me. No, I'm joking. Yeah. No, seriously, carry on.
Yeah, so just like from a psych and politics background, how did you experience that? Because that's huge, you know?
Incredibly gently is a big one. You know, when I first met Bishop Tutu, and I'll start with Tutu because he instigated the two. I first met him and he says, "Ooh, my name is Bishop Tutu and I have a big nose and I'm stumpy." So you sit in a plane in American Airlines to New York and someone thinks Tutu was your president. They know nothing about this country. And then you sitting with the man and you living his legacy, and then you coming to a man like P.W. Botha. What I'm trying to say to you is I've networked these men in where I found them, where his nemesis was P.W. Botha in the 1980s. You know, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. P.W. wanted a state of emergency. Doing it for a long time.
And we need to wrap. I just want to speak into one last image for me, and it's this one. Just tell us a story to close.
Ladies and gentlemen, often agencies and whoever, when I say agencies, I don't mean like TBWA, although I'm a client of theirs, they aid agencies that who say, right, the Human Rights Council or something, say, Matthew, please go out and please document, has change happened in this country? Is it visible? Is it happening without our advertising, happening without our lectures and our pushing? Ladies and gentlemen, it is. This is on the southern reaches of the Kalahari Desert, about a couple of 100 km from between Kuruman and Kimberley. I was photographing that day in a little village there called Huhudi Township, and it was late in the afternoon. I needed to get back to a place where I was staying, and I have a wonderful, beautiful 300mm lens which I put a 2x converter on, and so I was very far away. So I came around the bend and I stopped, and coming out the grass was this old black man and this young white boy, and I just thought, what the hell's going on? And the white boy was carrying the black bag. And then I looked down, grabbed my lens, put it on the thing, and I zoomed up, and I took this shot. This is in the middle of nowhere. And here we have an Afrikaans boy, because I chatted to them afterwards, and an old Khoisan man walking together, not anything to prove, no story to tell, but they are living and working together. And I just thought, you know what, this is where real change is happening in our country, you know, of the integration that is happening in segregated communities up in these areas, Northern Province, Northwest Cape, all those areas where they had been segregated for so long. You know, not just the apartheid era, 1948 to 94, but previously. South Africa had shamefully had the first concentration camps. We've known segregation a whole lot. Robben Island, as an example, is the epitome of segregation and of isolation. And here I've got numerous pictures of just South Africans in the middle of nowhere coming together. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Awesome. Matthew, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And as you can hear, there's so many more stories to be told. But we really take a lot out of your quest that you had towards a man and what came out of that. And I think that there's a lot of truth that you've put out there today and just what you've said to us. Just got a small bottle of wine here for you to say thank you.
That's always good. But really, this is a great forum. It's a great platform, the story sessions.
Thanks.
Travis, well done, and to your team. It's I love it. You know, it's formal but informal. You know, I haven't felt nervous once. Usually, I'm sweating like a banshee, but
exactly.
I'm not. Thank you for the privilege. I've just come back from Joburg. I've had a week of relaxation, so it's been perfect timing, and I'm able to get back on my horse and say, actually, you know what, I can carry on doing this. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. There's going to be some wrap-up stuff now. Oh, thank you. Cool. Great. And MatthewWoolman.co.za is his website if you want to pick up some more of his work. Just to let you guys know, we do support the Learn Project. They are outside. Why we support them is because of this. They are taking books to schools. They are redoing libraries. They delivered on Mandela Day 670 books to a local school here and actually, inserted these books into their library. They believe that readers make leaders. And just from Story Sessions' point of view, we're backing books. We're backing young kids reading. So, in future sessions, if you've got pre-loved books for children, we just want to try and get more books into these people's hands because they make them look awesome and they take them out to these young kids and they put them in their hands and say, hey, you must read. Let's do this thing. And then if you are at Hilton Arts Festival, going to be quite an interesting story session with Dame Janet Suzman up there at the Hilton Arts Festival. So if you're cruising up the hill for that, we'll be over there. And then just lastly, just say thanks so much to Daryl for Night Market tonight, Black Coffee for some gear. Dre and Seabrooks Theatre and Mark Project, everyone that contributes towards making this happen. And just to wrap up very, very quickly, what Don said earlier, the story sessions workshops, please, if you want to just engage with your story, we're not doing that for money or for profit. We're doing it because we believe in what Matthew's just said, that we can live a great story, we can change the world through our stories, and that Durban needs great stories to emerge out of its people. So if you just want to come and understand a little bit more about why we should live a great story and what your story could be, 20th of September, drop us an email and go onto our website. All right, great. Thank you so much for everything. We really appreciate you being here. Have a great night.